We all have a place in our house that we try not to look at. It's usually a closet, a drawer, or a dusty corner of the garage. I call this place the hobby graveyard. It is a museum of the people you thought you were going to be. There's the version of you who was going to be a musician, the version of you who was going to be a marathon runner, the version of you who was going to speak fluent Japanese by next summer. You look at this pile and you don't just see stuff. You see evidence. Evidence that you are flaky, that you have no discipline, that you are a quitter. You feel the weight of the money you wasted, but worse, you feel the weight of the identity you abandoned. Why can't you just stick to one thing? Why does your enthusiasm burn like a supernova, bright and hot for 2 weeks, and then vanish into a black hole? Let's dissect the corpse of your hobbies. To understand why you quit, we have to look at the drug you are addicted to. It isn't success, it's novelty. When you start a new hobby, let's say watercolor painting, you enter a phase called the beginner's high. Every brushstroke is new. You learn fast. You go from knowing nothing to knowing something in 24 hours. Your brain is flooded with dopamine. You feel like a prodigy. Your brain loves this phase because the return on investment is massive. For very little effort, you see huge progress. But then, you hit the gap. About 3 weeks in, the new car smell fades. The rapid progress stops. You realize that to get from okay to good, you have to paint boring fruit bowls for 6 months. The dopamine tap turns off. The grind begins. And because you have a gifted kid brain, you don't interpret this boredom as practice. You interpret it as failure. You crave the feeling of learning, not the suffering of mastery. So, you quit. Let's get technical for a second. This is about your threshold of boredom. Most people can tolerate a moderate amount of repetitive tasks because their brains provide a steady baseline of dopamine. They can practice the same guitar scale 500 times and feel fine. Your brain likely has a dopamine deficiency. You are understimulated by baseline reality. Repetition feels physically painful to you. It feels like wearing a wool sweater on bare skin. So when the hobby becomes repetitive, your brain screams, danger, low stimulation. You quit not because you are weak, but because you are starving. You need the nutritional density of new information to feel alive. But there is a deeper, darker reason for the graveyard. You weren't buying a hobby, you were buying a costume. This is the psychology of the fantasy self. When you bought that expensive camera, you didn't really want to spend hours editing photos in Lightroom. You wanted to be the kind of person who is a photographer. You wanted the aesthetic. You wanted the identity. The figure is surrounded by different costumes on hangers. A writer costume, a fitness costume, a polyglot costume. In consumer culture, we are taught that having leads to being. Buying the running shoes makes you feel fit even if you never run. Buying the books makes you feel smart even if you never read them. The purchase satisfies the identity crisis. Once you own the item, the fantasy is safe. Actually doing the activity threatens the fantasy, because it proves you aren't a master yet. So you keep the gear in the box, because a camera in a box represents infinite potential. A camera in your hand represents your current lack of skill. Here is the great irony of your shame. If you lived in the Renaissance, you would be considered a genius. You would be a polymath, someone who masters many fields. Da Vinci didn't stick to painting. He got bored and designed helicopters. A history book opens. We see Leonardo da Vinci. Label: painter, engineer, anatomist, musician. We see Benjamin Franklin. Label: writer, diplomat, inventor, scientist. But you live in the industrial age. Society wants you to be a cog. Cogs do one thing. You are an accountant. You are a dentist. You are a coder. Society shames you for having multiple interests because you are harder to categorize. You are harder to employ. They call you unfocused. They call you scattered. But historically, the people who changed the world were almost always the ones who quit doing just one thing. So, I want you to rename your graveyard. It is not a museum of failure. It is a library of experiences. You are a scanner. You scan the world for data. You didn't fail at guitar. You learned what music theory felt like. You extracted the data you needed, and you moved on. Your superpower is cross-pollination. You will write code that feels like music. You will run a business that looks like art. You will solve problems that the specialists can't solve because you have a toolbox that is 10 times bigger than theirs. Stop apologizing for your curiosity. The things in your closet aren't dead. They are just waiting for you to combine them. If you have a closet full of ghosts, please like and subscribe to my channel. We're building something new out of the parts. See you in the next video.